sap refinery lies dead ahead.
What does the Empire want with tree sap?
Nothing good. They refine the sap into a powerful compound, and they're rushing to expand production.
We have to stop them.
That's the plan. We don't know their end game, but they spread themselves too thin. This map we recovered proves it.
Alrighty, hello guys. So this time, my brother Brok and me, Sindri, are just going to be talking about Star Wars, sort of the Fallen Order game that was recently released by EA and developed by Respawn Entertainment, I think. Yep. I haven't played much of it. I've sort of been, not on the fence, but I just haven't been able to get around to it. But you have played it, so sort of this is going to be you sort of pitching it to me and anybody listening. And yeah, let's get straight into it.
Yeah, so just first of all, guys, this is like, as much as we possibly can, a spoiler-free review, because obviously Sindri hasn't played it, and I don't want to spoil it for him, and therefore, by extension, you guys. However, there might be a couple of spoilers in there, so there's a warning still for you guys, but as much as possible, this is spoiler-free, so I think it should be safe for anyone that doesn't want it to be completely spoiled. And just as another quick disclaimer, I've played this game. I have never played the Dark Souls games. And obviously being Respawn, it's told it's very Dark Soulsy. So I think you, Sindri, have played Dark Souls, so you can testify to
extensively, yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, let's get straight in now. This is a review, and we've got a review system. So anyone that didn't see our video before on what our review system will be, we're going to score out of 10, but into the decimal points. So it could have been a percentage, but you know, let's not get too like ridiculous on that. What I wanted to do is in our reviews is we're not going to be like every game's a 9, every game's a 10. We're going to be, if we ever score a 9 or a 10 for a game, then that's like one of the best games that's ever come out. Like we're going to be like, so in this instance, a 7 is a really, really solid score, and that's a worth buying, like definitely worth buying. So just to say that, but our main categories basically will be scoring out of graphics, gameplay, story, world/atmosphere, soundtrack, overall immersion, wow factor, and then if it met or exceeded expectations or not. And then we aggregate that score, or we average that score, and then that is what the overall score will be. So just to get that out of the way, so I just want to get started a little bit. My first thoughts, I guess, turning it on, getting into it, were really, really good. The kind of tutorial level sort of captured me a lot. Like you're this kind of, first of all, the actor is familiar. For anyone that's watched like Gotham, for example, he plays Jerome, aka the young Joker in Gotham. So he's quite an known face for a lot of people, and I think he's quite good at this kind of role. I think he's the perfect guy for this kind of character in the game. And basically, yeah, this is just really capturing like intro. Like, it hooked me in, and it made me feel like I was in Star Wars, but it wasn't just purely in the Skywalker, Star Wars. Like it was a character that could exist in the world. It's really world building or galaxy building for Star Wars, I felt. Have you seen much of the intro missions, Sindri?
Almost not at all, really. I sort of know the general like premise, but I don't. I haven't like specifically seen them, and obviously it's the sort of thing where playing it is definitely going to be different to sort of watching it or hearing it for immersion factor and whatnot. But yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, the first things were it looks great. The colors really, come out of the screen. First moment you light your lightsaber, the glow of it is like spot on. It really feels like you've got a lightsaber in your hand, which is kind of what a lot of this is going to be about. Obviously, being that Respawn Dark Souls style, it's going to be about a lot of sword play, essentially, right?
Yeah, definitely, and sort of the one thing I have sort of got a good grasp of, having played it, was the sort of combos you can get going. It sort of depends on your lightsaber, but I was using the the double-bladed sort of like lightsaber staff one, similar to Darth Maul.
You're using my purple one.
Yes. Your purple one, and
or pink for a little while, wasn't it?
It was, yeah, and there's different combos depending on the lightsaber you have. You can sort of split the blades into sort of dual wielding and then back into the sort of lightsaber staff style. And then also you can ignite one blade or both blades at the same time. So it just sort of gives you this. I don't know. It sounds silly, but that's exactly what you want to see in Star Wars. Really, like you want to be able to have these sort of flashy combos, these the ability to sort of use your lightsaber in different ways, and just generally like feel like you are actually a Jedi in the Star Wars universe, rather than just like always having your blade ignited, always using the same like combo like most other games. Like it just feels good to play the fighting aspects.
Yeah. So I guess a little bit of spoiler alert for anyone. Basically, your character Cal Kestis was a Padawan when Order 66, which was obviously the order that Darth Sidious gave to basically kill all the Jedi, was given. You managed to escape, but your master didn't, and you ended up with his lightsaber. So you didn't fully like complete your training. You weren't a Jedi Knight or Jedi Master yet. You were a Padawan. So he has some of the Force, but he's not like a fully realized Jedi yet, which I think plays into this quite a lot. Where there are moments where you like the Force is just almost like here's a couple of things that you can do, and that's almost to a certain extent a bit of a drawback, but it makes sense given the timeline. So it's set 5 years after Order 66. So what is that? That's 14 years, I think, before the Battle of Yavin, which is obviously the battle at the end of A New Hope, the original Star Wars movie. So it's set, when the Empire is pretty much establishing itself as, or has established itself as the dominant force in the galaxy. Just a few other things. So I think the look of the game probably and just a few drawbacks coming up on the look of the game probably is more of a success than the actual substance of the game. I guess what I mean by that is that there's like a lot of customization options, but actually not really, if that makes sense. So there's like 30 or like poncho options for Cal, but they're all just poncho. You're just changing your poncho. There's different color poncho here and there, and really most of them ugly anyway. You can change. You have a droid, like a buddy droid called BD1, because it's Star Wars, and so every story that comes out from Star Wars at the moment, it has to have a droid companion for some reason. If you look at like Rogue One, there was a droid. You look at there's BB-8. There's always droids in Star Wars at the moment, which is actually a little bit annoying. But there you go. But BD1 is useful because he has health and can get you through things and whatever, but you can customize him, and again it's just really changing the color. Like there's not really anything extra that you're customizing, and the same goes for the ship that your I guess your friends that kind of save you in the beginning of the tutorial. They have a ship, and you can change the color scheme of that too, and there's a couple of really kind of interesting color schemes. Like one is the same color exactly as like the Millennium Falcon and various other things, but ultimately it's all just surface level. And the same goes for the lightsaber. Like you have all these different hilts and emitters and switches and whatever, and you can make your lightsaber look like Luke's lightsaber a little bit, for example, but ultimately it all kind of feels a little bit empty. Like it's not really deep, truly. Like for example, I was looking forward to a single bladed lightsaber with a curved hilt because I've always liked that as a lightsaber design, and you can't do that in the game. And I know that sounds like a small thing to say, but it just means that there's not that much actually of customizability when you get down to it. Right off the bat, you can choose green or blue for your lightsaber, or orange if you did the DLC, the pre-order DLC. And like I didn't, so mine was blue or green. I ended up going with green. And then for the vast majority of the story, that's the only two colors that you can go with. And then again, spoiler alert, there's a time in the game where you can unlock other colors. But it all feels a little bit, just there you go, just a bit kind of lip service, fan service, rather than actually for a reason,
Right, yeah, so it's sort of just reskins, I guess, isn't it? It's rather than actual, mechanic changing,
yeah, basically, yeah. So red is not a color because, again, spoiler alert, your character is a Jedi and is a light side character. It's not an RPG in the sense that it's you don't have like full-on customization or anything like that. it really is a you know, like just an action, basically an action adventure game with a little bit of light level exploration, which on the surface is kind of cool. Like you go to a few planets that you know, any fans would have heard of some of these planets, but ultimately it is all a little bit surface level for me as well. And then I guess, where do I get to? So let's go to the movement. Some of the movements of the character I felt were sometimes clunky. Some of the same buttons to do force things, or the same buttons to then like run along a wall, for example, to get across a gap. So I found myself falling down, like, and basically you don't die if you fall down, you just kind of respawn back where your last jump off point was, which is okay, I guess, because the amount of times I fell because it's like I went to jump and run across the wall, but instead he went through like a force pull in midair and therefore didn't run across the wall. Just like, I can't, like, if I had $1 for every time that happened, I think I would be a millionaire already. Like, it was really frustrating. Combat as well, I gather, is very Dark Souls style in combat, and there was moments where it felt a little bit frustrating, where certain low-level enemies were just OP, like, just totally OP. Like I found, maybe I'm just a low-level gamer, but I found there was like an enemy that was like a mountain goat, like a large mountain goat with like a horn, and I just found it, like, no matter what happened, I would never come through it without taking a lick. Even when I was like fully, like, you know, powered up and XP'd up, like, I would still always take a small hit from it. It was really frustrating.
Yeah, I think in the small little part I played, the only time I saw that enemy was when it was right near a cliff, so you kind of just force push it off and move on.
Yes.
Yes. But I can imagine, you know, I can't really talk on that one because I haven't fought it like a man fairly. I sort of cheated.
Yeah, well, I did that as well once you got force push. And the other thing to mention as well is, like, the force powers, like I said, are almost like an add-on afterthought, because you basically get to do one before you've lost force, like, usage, basically, and you have to wait for it to recharge. And I can say that it's a little bit, I don't know, it just feels a little bit off that way as well, because again, I could find he was a Padawan or whatever and didn't finish his training, but you know what, like, the force is limited, and the way to, like, level up, there was a really funny criticism I saw online, which was the way to level up in this game, because obviously it's a game and I get it, but the way to level up is the more enemies you kill, the more XP you get, but like, the way of the Jedi is not to do that.
Yeah.
So, it's kind of a little bit off, but I guess they had to do something for a level up system for being a game. But you know, it's just a couple of things like that that sort of take you out of the world again a little bit. I guess boss fights are always a big thing of Dark Souls games, so I'm told, and you certainly get boss fights in this, but I think on the most part, there's a couple of good ones, a couple of lightsaber battles, but on the most part, they're a little bit underwhelming, I thought. A couple of, like, fun and a bit more intense ones, but really nothing that should challenge you that majorly, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine them making too many crazy, like, I'm not entirely sure how to describe it, but for example, in Dark Souls, many of the bosses aren't, like, humanoid. Like, it's sort of a 50-50 split. Like, half of them are humanoid, half of them are, like, monstrous or, you know, four-legged or whatever it happens to be. And I feel like in this game, it's a lot more difficult for them to sort of make the more monstrous and less humanoid enemies. I feel like the best bosses in this game are going to have to be the ones where it's an enemy who also uses a lightsaber. So you sort of get limited to what mechanics can you sort of squeeze in to a lightsaber duel, basically, to make the boss unique, is what I'm thinking. But
yeah, so I think you get maybe 4 of those in total.
Yeah.
3 of which essentially are with the same person.
Right.
Various stages throughout the game. One other is with another, like, so you're being chased by the Inquisitors, or the Inquisitor squad, which obviously was put together by Darth Vader to help, you know, purge, I guess, the rest of the Jedis from the galaxy. And so one of them's with, like, you know, the main one that's been chasing you. One of them's with another one. Then you get the main one again at another stage, and she then reveals who she is, and it's a story moment. And then you get, like, the final, I guess, battle with her at the end. And then there's one, as I said, with the other Inquisitor, and then there's one more with another, like, you know, like lightsaber user, which is actually pretty cool in a lot of ways. And I'm not going to say anything about that one. I'm going to leave it there because I don't want to spoil anything. But it's one. That was one of my, you know, that was probably my favorite boss fight in the game. That one, actually.
Yeah, I think I know exactly which one you mean. But yeah, for everyone else who doesn't,
and it was the hardest one as well, in my opinion. But basically, apart from that, like, the other boss fights are with, you know, you have a couple of bounty hunters that you have a boss fight against, and you have, like, the first one is like with a giant toad thing, which, yeah, like at the very start of the game, like when you're really weak, is a challenge. But by the time, you know, if you come back to it later on in the game, it's like 2 swipes and it's down. But basically, I just found it a little bit weak. One of the other frustrating things, obviously, is you've got enemies everywhere, which is good because it helps build XP and everything else. But you have these like meditation stations, a bit like the campfires in Dark Souls, where, you know, you can rest, you can save, and everything else. But if you rest, that, like, restoring your, you know, your health and everything, it respawned all the enemies, like all of them, which I also found sometimes really frustrating, because sometimes you've rested to recover your health because you've had to kill all of those enemies, and it's taken it out of you. And then just to, like, you know, so basically you just have to go along with no health if you don't want to fight the enemies again in an area, because you might have to double back on yourself, and then bang, those same tough enemies are there again, and suddenly you're losing your health again because it's quite hard. Which I found a little bit frustrating. There needs to be, I understand that's something they did in Dark Souls and it's part of the challenge of the game, but there needs to be like a middle ground where you can, like, I don't know, recover one of your health things and 50% of your health and not respawn the enemies versus all. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. It's sort of a mechanic that Dark Souls has made, you know, popular because of the challenge, and now a lot of games are sort of using it. And I guess in Dark Souls it works because you know what you're getting into. That's kind of the whole point of the game. But yeah, I guess in a sort of action game, it's sort of I don't know. I feel like it should work more like a checkpoint system where you finish an area, then you get your rest station and sort of do all of that, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you're fighting the same enemies that have just magically respawned again. Like I can imagine in a sort of Star Wars universe that would sort of take you out of it a little bit, because you've just, you know, slaughtered all these
when they're stormtroopers.
Yeah, you've slaughtered a bunch of stormtroopers in a village, and then you come back through and there's the same dialogue, and they're, you know, there's the same stormtroopers again. It's like, oh, okay, so I'm not making any impact on this sort of galaxy as a Jedi.
Yeah,
at all.
Yeah, a little bit. What else I wanted to say? I mean, I think the storyline is very basic as well. Like, it's not necessarily bad, because it's not, like, it's absolutely fine. It does, you know what I mean? Like, it serves the purpose. It's okay. It allows for a little bit of character development. It allows for a bit of tension, but it's very predictable. And sometimes, you know, and again, predictability is not necessarily bad in its own way, because, you know, let's not subvert expectations just for the sake of it. We've heard those arguments. So, you know, predictability isn't necessarily a bad thing, but sometimes it takes you away from the immersion a little bit. And, you know, you're like, basically from the very first tutorial, I was calling some of the shots of what happened in the story later on. Like, and that probably shouldn't be exactly the way.
Yeah.
You know, you might be able to guess one or two things because you've been a seasoned veteran of games and story and movies, etc. However, you know, there should be some things that are a little bit surprising, and there was just literally, there was one thing in the whole game that totally surprised me, and it was spoilt for me online, but it still did the job when it happened. It still surprised me enough because I knew it was going to happen at some point, but I made sure not to click on videos or whatever until I'd seen it for myself in game, and it worked. And, you know, we all know we know what that is. We can maybe talk very briefly on it at the very end, so we can let people, like, after doing the score, so that anyone that doesn't want this to be spoiled a little bit won't have that happen. But yeah, that was the only thing that really got me and was not predictable in how it happened.
Yeah, fair enough. I think I sort of knew, just based on my prior knowledge of the Star Wars universe, what would happen sort of near the end of the game.
Yes.
just based on the time period that the game is set in. And I think anyone who didn't expect it isn't actually that into Star Wars. So
well, let's just talk a little bit more. Save this for after we do the score, so that anyone that doesn't want to have any spoilers can get what score we're going to give it, and then they can stop watching if they want to from there. But I do want to touch on it because like it is worth mentioning, but I don't want to spoil it at this stage for anyone that doesn't want it to be spoiled. So you've been warned. All right, so another point, I guess, that I had was, as I said, exploration is quite limited. Like, you're kind of going along the same sort of trails in areas, and there might be a few ways to get around, but ultimately, it's not an open world game. That's for sure. And I can understand why, but I'll come back to this after the next point because they sort of feed into the same. I felt like it was just over too quickly. To be honest, I didn't feel like it was enough, and that's also a sign that it was good. When you finish it and you're like, oh, already, that's often a good sign. But it felt like not enough, and it felt like it was, I don't know whether they'd cut stuff out or they'd changed, but basically, so there's a Night Sister that's from the planet Dathomir, which is the same planet that Darth Maul's from, that kind of starts off as an enemy. Spoiler alert, I guess. Starts off as an enemy, but ends up sort of joining your team and joining your crew. And you think, great, okay, so normally when someone joins your crew, and it's the first person that's joined your crew in the game, you think that, there's still plenty of game left, right? Generally.
Yeah.
Right? There's like 2 missions and then it's over after that. And it's almost like a plot convenience point again, where basically she does something to help you to get to the last mission, and that's kind of the only purpose that she really serves, apart from the odd quips and conversations that you can have. Also, she's like obviously like a lesbian, and again, that's fine, but it's just random. Like, why they need to put that in, I don't know.
Yeah, it's not particularly relevant, but sure. Like, if they want to add that, sure, I guess, why not?
Well, and the only reason why I bring that up is like you don't find out, apart from the ship's like captain and pilot, who's like a little alien dude with 4 arms. You don't really have any allusions to anybody else's like sexuality, so I don't know why we have to with this one. But anyway, that's whatever. She's not a bad character. She's got some funny quips, but then that's it. Like, game's over, and you're like, right, well, where's the rest? That's kind of, and the same with exploration. Is it feels like they've kind of shown you like you can go to like Kashyyyk, for example, which is the Wookiee home planet. And you're thinking, oh, great, like that's a really cool planet to sort of explore. It reminds me of like Avatar movie, with all the trees and everything. But like, you can't really see that much of it, to be honest. Like, you can't go to many places. So it's a bit like, and one of the points that I want to get to at the end is, I think this is a game that would have actually fully benefited from being a bit more of an RPG. And it doesn't have to be a big RPG on the scale of like The Witcher or anything like that. Just having a bit more, like even the level of like Witcher 2 RPG, which is really a linear kind of game, and you're in that particular area and you're in that area alone until you get to the next area. So it's not like open world still, but like I think it would have gained from having that rather than what it had, to be honest, because you would have got more out of it, I think. And what it feels like to me, I could be wrong, but it feels like this is something they're trying to set up to have like annual or biannual, not biannual, what's the right word? Biennial, every 2 years, I think, like alternate year releases potentially, or that they're going to release a big DLC with like a few extra levels to it. That's what it feels like to me.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised in the slightest, because this is EA we're talking about, so
yeah,
who knows.
It was really not like a complete EA game. It didn't feel like EA much, except for the fact that, as I said, it didn't feel complete to me, personally.
Yeah, well, again, like, obviously it was Respawn, so it's not EA who, like, made it, but they probably have quotas or a hand in as to, DLC content and stuff, so, I don't know.
Yeah. I think also if they had added, so there was I think 4 or 5 planets that you could explore or go to, and I think if they had just doubled that, and then that would have probably solved a lot of the issues that I had with it. Just more to see. You know what I mean? Even if they didn't have necessarily story reasons to go there, but like, you know, once you've finished, you can still explore a little bit and, you know, find stuff and do the collectible, whatever. Like, if you had these 4 planets where maybe there's a couple of small side missions or whatever that aren't related to the main story that you can go to, that would have probably been enough for me. But it just felt like when it was done, it was like, well, I don't really see the point in playing anymore, to be honest.
Yeah, like there isn't really any post-game content, is there?
No, like as I said, you can still fly around, and there's still a few like interactions and dialogue things that come up that obviously you wouldn't have heard during the main mission. But that's it really. Like you can still get collectibles, like extra ponchos, great. But yeah, that's it really. So I think I'm going to get into the ratings. Because I think there'll obviously be a few people that will be interested to know. So I'll start with graphics. Like I said, I think graphically it was very good. It wasn't perfect, and there were a few glitches in the game that I came across. So I've scored it 7.8 out of 10. In the brief time that you played it, do you think that's fair?
Yeah, from what I've heard of it, I'm sure that's pretty accurate. You've obviously finished it, so I sort of got to trust your vote on that one. But yeah, from what I played, it definitely doesn't feel like anything sort of less than that. Nothing too glaring.
And just for the record, just going back to what we said at the start, a 7 out of 10 for us is a good mark. Like so people will see 7.8 and they think, oh, it's not great. At 7.8 is really strong from me. Like a 5 would be not great. That would be an average. You know, like it's not bad, it's not great. Anything below a 5 would be a bad. So at 7 to 7.8, for example, is really good for me. Gameplay, I gave 7.5. And the reason is there's some really good combos. The combat did, on the most part, feel pretty good. The movement and stuff was sometimes off, but like overall, it still felt pretty good to me. So I think a 7.5, which is like a good solid mark as well.
Yep.
I've gone story. I've given 4.7. The reason being is that, as I said, it was very predictable. It was very short. There was nothing fancy or anything like that with it. There were no real tricks or turns or twists or anything that really, you know, made it more. But it was solid, and it did carry it enough. So like it's slightly below what I was expecting, but it's still a decent, like it's still an okay score for me. The whole world / atmosphere, I think I've gone for 7.8 again. The reason being again is because I did still feel like I was in the Star Wars galaxy, and it was a good like galaxy building or like world building kind of game that didn't have to focus on like Luke or Anakin or, you know, Yoda or anyone like that really, to kind of make it this Star Wars thing. It was perfectly done really, like, you know, where, to be honest, even references to some of those big like Star Wars characters that you know of were very limited, which I actually liked. I actually appreciated as a general Star Wars Galaxy fan.
Yeah, I think that's definitely what a lot of. I mean, I don't want to bring up the sort of sequel movies as a reference, but a lot of Star Wars sort of forgets that they could do. You don't need to rely or lean on these established characters. You just need to lean on the lore. Like, you can create a new character that's still likable and still a compelling story in the Star Wars universe without being like, oh, they're a Skywalker, or oh, they're a Palpatine, or whatever it happens to be. Like, you don't need to include them almost at all. I think the biggest thing about this game, which again we'll get into after the score, is that one of the few characters who does return is a big moment, because it's not constantly shoved down your face that there's characters from the original movies or the prequels or whatever. There's basically only one.
Well, there were like 3 to 4 references, so yeah. Like, you know, and I'm not going to again spoil it for people because they're quite nice moments, but there's like a character from none of the trilogies that comes up for a moment. There's a character from the prequels that is like a very small character that you would have only heard mentioned by name like once in the prequels, but you know, still. And yeah, then there's this other one which we'll get to after these scores are done, which is probably, as I said, the biggest moment of the whole game, and done really well. But overall, like, you don't really have as many references as you think. There's a couple in there, but that's it really. Like, all the character names are new. You know, your Jedi Master is a new character that was created for the game. but it still fits in with the world, you know, and it still easily could be lore, which this obviously is now considered to be canon, I should say, which is obviously considered to be by Disney. So it's good, and I think there's potential, and I think this is a game that, you know, as I said, we'll have to wait to see what else happens, whether there's more or, you know, DLCs as well. I want to touch on the soundtrack as well, like so basically the general music that plays and all the rest of it, the sounds and stuff. I reckon 6.5. Like, I reckon it was above what I was expecting. It was pretty good. It felt right. It wasn't full-on Star Wars music from the movies, but it still felt like Star Wars in general to me personally. So I was quite happy with that. Overall immersion, I marked to a 6 because, as I said, there was a few moments that take you out a little bit. But it was still better than what I thought. And now the biggest score that I gave it was the wow factor, and I guess there's a really hard, it's not really easy to define what we mean by that. It's kind of like that, I guess, intangible, something that you can't really put your finger on, but just a general, I guess, something, you know. And for me, like, the wow factor, it was 9.2, which is a really high score. It's one of the highest scores I've ever given for any, like, individual factor. And the reason being was that when I went into it, I was expecting it to be this, you know, sequel era Disney Star Wars style thing, and it wasn't. It almost was, but it wasn't quite. It was better than that. The gameplay was good enough, like, it looked good enough, it felt good enough whilst playing it. It was probably only at the very end when I finished it that I started to focus more on some of the negatives. So I think the wow factor was that initial feeling, and I think, yeah, like, I want to give that the props that it deserves, so 9.2 for that one. And then the met expectations exceeded expectations. Again, it exceeded my expectations, so I gave it a 7.4. So met expectation would be 5, so 7.4, which means that it was very much exceeded. And then that gives it an overall score from me at 7.1 out of 10, which I think is a pretty good score nonetheless. I'd be keen to know once you played it if we want to revisit this and see what you would give it.
Yeah, I'll definitely have a look at it and talk to you about it after the video, and maybe, if nothing else, maybe add my score to sort of the description or the pinned comments or something as well.
Yeah, I'll be interested. We can do a very small, quick update, or, like you say, pin the comment. I'll be very interested to see what your score is once you finish. But I think 7.1, I'm comfortable with that because it's good. It's better than what I expected, but I'm not trying to oversell it. I think if you play it, I very much recommend it, but I wouldn't pay full price for it.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I think better to maybe catch it on a sale or something.
Flame beetles, they're coming through the wall. Hit their nest.
But yep. So do we want to get into a bit of a spoiler talk at the end, or?
Yeah, let's do it. First of all, have you seen the spoiler? Okay, so again, spoiler warning. Anyone that doesn't want to be spoiled, end the video there. 7.1 out of 10. Thank you very much. See you next time. Anyone that does want to talk about it and see it and everything else, let's talk about it now. You've seen it? You've seen the clips or whatever?
Yep.
Okay. What did you think from the clips?
I sort of knew that it was going to go down that route, with, you know, obviously Darth Vader. For anyone who doesn't know, sorry, but yeah, Darth Vader is sort of the, I guess, final boss of the game before sort of ending it. And again, yeah, just based on the sort of time, the sort of time that the game is set in the Star Wars lore, you sort of know that this is what should happen. Basically, is what should be happening by the end of the game. And I'm glad he showed up.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I think it made the game, it really, and I think it saved it from probably what I would have given it as a slightly lower score, as well. It's really, again, a brief appearance, but it's like, it encapsulates everything that it needs, plus it helps to actually set up more. So it factors into the story quite well. And again, I'm not giving away the story, not that there's a lot to give away, but I'm not going to do that still. But it's, when you go to this final battle, it's set on, like, I think a moon, I think, off a planet that looks very much like a volcano planet, a lava planet. And again, if you know anything about Star Wars, then you know that's probably Mustafar, which of course is a very meaningful place for Darth Vader, and that's where he has his castle as well in the canon. you still kind of don't fully expect it when it happens, even though it's obviously set up for it, because you're just immersed in the story that you have, and there's been no mention of him before, so there's no reason for you to think that way. But when it happens, it's so perfect. So you finally obviously defeat the second sister, who's the main Inquisitor that you've been sort of battling with, obviously, over the time. And then when you finally defeat her, you're like, so your friend is the former like trainer, if you like, or master of the second sister, when the second sister was still a Jedi Padawan. So they have a connection, and basically she appears at the end of the fight, and she tries to help basically bring her back to the light side, as it looks like it's about to happen. And just as that happens, she like the second sister stops and panics, and is at that exact moment that you're like, oh shit. Like, you kind of start to know at that point, like, whoa, okay, what's made her stop? And then you hear the breathing, and before you see anything, and like, it's very iconic. It's done very, very well. And when he appears, you know that the shit's about to go down. Your like master, if you like, your new master, basically charges at him and just gets brushed aside with the Force and falls down this big shaft. So it's just you and him, and it's like a cutscene, but you're just like, dude, just run, please, just run. Like, does this game end with my character dying? Like, is this Halo Reach all over again? And basically Vader, like, you can't take health from him. Like, he's just like, he's on like God mode basically, and he's after a thing that you've obviously got. And you try to run back through the facility from him, and he's crushing like the whole thing, and it's done really well, and like the tension is built really, really well. You know he's too strong for you, way too strong. And you know, eventually you get away from him. But it's done amazingly well, and it sets up for the next one, I think, as well. You know that you're existing in a time where he's essentially the head of, or the subordinate to the Emperor in the Empire. You also know that he's the one that started the Inquisitor team, if you like. So you know that he's around, like he exists in this world. And yeah, it was just done really, really well, I thought. And I think it saved the game to a certain extent, if I'm honest.
Yeah, because at least, despite what you said about it being sort of short, I guess at least it ends on a positive note. Well, positive in terms of, the overall plot. Maybe not positive in, what's his name, Cal Kestis's mind, but yeah.
Agreed. Well, you get out with the thing that you came for, which is something as well. So yeah, it's good. It's a good little scene. I think it was pretty awesome. There's some good reactions from some streamers online as well. That some of them are pretty good. I mean, one of them said, "Oh my god, it's Darth Maul," and it wasn't ironic, which really made me want to punch someone. Because it's like, these are the same sort of people like, yeah, I'm a Star Wars fan. It's like, you're obviously not. Like, you're obviously not.
Literally, can't mess them up if you tried.
Yeah, like I would have thought that saying that would have been completely ironic, but it turns out no, he doubled down on it later on, so it cannot have been. Anyway, no, I thought that was pretty good. As I said, it was a really good little thing at the end, and kind of, as I said, that's one of the things that left me wanting more, because it's like, okay, well, now I know what we've come to the party for, and then that was it, end of game, basically.
Yeah. But fair enough. So overall score, yours was what, 7.1? Did you say?
7.1. So it is a definitely recommend, but not something that I would say to buy at full price. Get it on a sale or a discount when it comes down a little bit, by all means. And also, I'm probably more excited now that I found out that Star Wars Jedi Academy is getting a remaster that's coming out in the next couple of months. PS4 and I think Xbox One. That was an excellent game from back in the day, and it has actually, even from back then, I think it had better customization of character and of lightsaber and everything, and also the ability to go down and learn Dark Force powers as well as light. So yeah, that's probably the one that I'm more looking forward to.
Yep, so just to end, I'd just like to sort of ask you, would this be a game that fans would enjoy? Because obviously in this current age, a lot of the Star Wars material, especially, the sequels, not really for the fans, and that's been made pretty clear. So is this a game that, as a Star Wars fan, I should play?
Okay, so that's a good question, and it's something that we are going to ask at the end of a lot of videos, like our Witcher Netflix review video last couple of weeks ago. I think it can be a game that fans will enjoy. And I think you can get some of the small little references and stuff from it, but I still think that it's going to be more for the new generation, if I'm honest.
Alrighty, that's fair enough. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in for this review. Went on a bit longer than we expected, but you know, it's a pretty popular game from sort of just last year, so wanted to definitely get that one out. If you have any more closing remarks, let me know.
No, I think I've said everything I need to say. I think we will see you in the comment section. What did you think? And also looking forward to when you played it and you get to tell me what your score would be for it too.
Yep, alrighty. Thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Games play best on Xbox One.